Good evening. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Sophia, and I'm part of the IIHS Word Lab team that hosts public texts every month. Before we begin this evening session, just a few things to keep in mind. Please post your questions using the Q&A box at the bottom of your screens. This session will be recorded and made available on the IIHS YouTube channel. The channel link is in the chat box. If you want to stay updated with upcoming events, please leave your contact details in the chat box and we will add you to our emailing list. It's my pleasure to introduce our guests for today. We have Abhinav Bindra and Rohit Brijnath with us, and they'll be talking about the book, A Shot at History. Abhinav Bindra is the first Indian to win an individual Olympic gold in Beijing in 2008. And the first Indian to win a world championship gold in 2006 in air rifle shooting. Born in Dehradun, he has won over 150 individual medals in a career spanning over 20 years. He's a recipient of the Padma Bhushan, the Arjuna Award, and is the youngest recipient of the Rajiv Gandhi Khel Ratna Award. He was also honored with the title of Honorary Lieutenant Colonel in the Territorial Army. For his exceptional contribution to the sport of shooting, he was awarded the Blue Cross in 2018 by the International Shooting Sport Federation, which is the IISSF's highest honor. After his retirement from the sport, he's involved with the Abhinav Bindra Foundation, as well as his own company, Abhinav Futuristics Private Limited, that focuses on sports science and technology, data-driven training, as well as global best practices that are locally contextualized. A Shot at History is his first book, co-authored with Rohit Brijnath. In 35 years of sports writing, Rohit Brijnath has covered 6 Olympic Games, 5 Asian Games, 2 Cricket World Cups, and over 20 tennis Grand Slams. He has written for newspapers in India and Australia and for the BBC South Asia website. He's currently an assistant sports editor at the Straits Times in Singapore. He has co-authored the book A Shot at History with Abhinav Bindra. He's the happiest when visiting bookshops. Our moderator for this evening is IIHS's Amlanjyoti Goswami. Thank you all for joining us. We are thrilled to have you. Over to you, Amlan.
Hello, everybody. Good evening. I'm very excited about today for 3 reasons. First, 2 exemplary professionals, each epitomizing what it means to excel. And we will learn more about them as today's discussion goes. Abhinav, of course, is a household name, champion shooter. Rohit Brijnath has his own fan following. A lot of us grew up collecting paper clippings of Rohit's articles in the good old days. And it's such a nice feeling to have him here today. Rohit is, I think he's in a league of his own, as far as sports writing is concerned, comparable to, there are only a handful of people in that kind of league right now. And Rohit is one of them. And more importantly, he's also the pioneer of a whole genre of sports writing. And there's so many good sports writers in India today, all of whom look up to Rohit with a lot of admiration. And I think that's something that Rohit is should be very, very proud of. The other reason I'm very excited, of course, is the book, it's a wonderfully written book. It's a book about sports and about winning Olympic gold and so on. But it's also touches the genre of, it's almost life writing. So it's sports and life together, which is why it's a different kind of book. It has its own following. It has inspired Olympic champions. I was reading the other day about Avni Lekhara, who won a gold in the 10-meter air rifle event in this year's Paralympics. She was inspired by A Shot at History. But the interesting thing about this book is that this is not a book that has come out now. So we are looking at A Shot at History from, so to speak, the eyes of history. It's been 10 years since the book. It's been about nearly 5 years since the first, the reprint. And we can kind of look back at the book with some distance, with some perspective. And in that sense, this is an exciting very exciting moment for the book as well. It's assumed the nature of a minor classic. People know about the book, sports followers know about the book, but I also feel that the book deserves an audience outside sports as well. And part of it is the reason why we're having this conversation today, because it touches many things where sports and life kind of intersect. And the third reason I'm excited is, of course, the fact that all of you are here. Zoom and technology has kind of enabled stuff to happen like this, where Rohit's in Singapore, I'm in Delhi, Abhinav's in Chandigarh. There are people from all over the world right now watching. So the little fireside chat, so to speak, has some global kind of dimensions. So it's a nice group. It's a nice gathering, and welcome to all of you. Abhinav and Rohit, when I read the book a couple of times, I found the book very interesting and very different from usual sports biographies or autobiographies. The first difference being that it's a very quiet book. It's not something that you can devour at one go. It takes its time, you take it, you munch. It's one of those books where you kind of, in Francis Bacon's words, you have to chew and digest that book. It takes its time, you savor it. It's like good wine, so to speak. And I was wondering how the two of you got together. What was this Jugalbandi like? It's been a while. I remember Rohit writing about Abhinav in 2007, saying he's our gold medal prospect for Beijing. And something appeared in 2000. Yeah, it was a Mint article, I guess. And then something was done in HT. So you were very clear that this guy is going to go for gold and he's going to win it. Just to give you a glimmer of this, and I'm kind of going to tempt our readers, future readers as well, about the book. I'm going to read a particular excerpt just to give you a palpable sense of style. This is quote unquote. But if I don't have VVS Lakshman's hand-eye magic or Leander Pace's instinctive athleticism, I do have one thing: fine motor control. You know those movies where the hero gently draws the detonator out of the bomb with 0.4 seconds left on the timer? I'd be good with that. Let me explain. My trigger is sensitive. It takes just 30 grams of pressure to set it off, almost to the point where if a platoon of arguing bees sat on it, it will fire. But I have enough control in my finger to pull it back 20 grams and then hold it, and then exert a little more to fire as gently as a butterfly's breath. It is cool. This is dangerously good writing. And I think it's very privileged to read this. So simple question, where did you guys meet as far as the book was concerned? Rohit, how difficult was it to probe this inscrutable Indian, so to speak? And Abhinav, how easy was it to work with Rohit? What was the collaboration looking like? It was a Jugalbandi of a very unique kind. What do you think about this? Yeah, Rohit, first you, maybe then Abhinav can come in after that.
He's got a better memory, so maybe he can remember. When did we meet? I think I was in India today when we met.
Called me to your office and refused to meet me anywhere else.
Yeah, I know. I summoned him to my office. He was an unknown shooter. I could summon him in those days. But no, but I just want to say that thing about me saying that he was in 2007, saying that he was going to win gold. It's just a job of sports writers to keep making predictions. You make about 1,000, you get about 3 right. So that was just one of them. So I don't know, we met when he was very young, and then I was already, I think, living in Australia when he started doing a little better, and then living in Singapore. And then what happened? I think I called him for an interview before the Olympics. Is that what happened?
That's correct.
Well, say something more.
Well, you wrote the article, so why don't you go ahead?
So I find Abhinav, we are friends now. At that time I didn't know him well, and I found him very intriguing, very different from other athletes, which would mean cricketers, which is who you spoke to normally in India. And so I was, attracted to this different type of athlete who thought in a different way and had a craft which I didn't particularly understand. I didn't understand shooters. We probably thought they were boring people. Maybe they are boring people. I don't know. And so all I know is I remember after the Olympics, us having a conversation, and he's such a fastidious person. I think that's what first fascinates me about him. He's very, very, very fastidious to a point that is almost bizarre. The way he used to study every single pellet, in front of a magnifying glass. And if it had a scratch, he wouldn't use it. And there's so many, he was very particular about his shooting jacket. And I think there's a tailor in Chandigarh who's still suffering from the times that he had to restitch that jacket. And he's smiling, he knows. So I told him at that time that he should do a book because I thought it was very fascinating. The life that he led, and he has a certain type of intensity. I think that, the difference is football or tennis, these are outward expression sports. I think shooting is a very inward type of sport. It requires, you can't see the skills except for the shot, right? But, his breathing, his balance, the concentration, this ability, you were reading that part about how he holds the trigger. I mean, I actually fired his gun in his range. I was not very good, but it's an art form. He is brilliant at what he does. And so then when I suggested he do the book, and then he asked me, and then we sort of, even though we were living in different countries, we started working. But you can ask him what it was like working with me.
Yeah, Abhinav, how was the sparring like?
No, it was an enjoyable experience for me. I think for me, doing the book was almost therapeutic because I think, when you're an athlete and, you rarely have the luxury to look back into your career. And doing the book gave me that luxury to look back a little bit, to heal a little bit, things that were still inside of me but hadn't been addressed. I think for me personally, it was very therapeutic. Of course, I enjoyed the whole experience with Rohit to a great degree because he was somebody who always appreciated the whole process of the sport and the little details of sport. It was not always about outcomes for him. I think he always appreciated the joy and effort, and I think that's very evident from his writing and even my interactions with him earlier prior to doing the book. So for me, it was a wonderful experience. Of course, he tried to probe me to a great degree and wanted to get more juice out of me and juicy stories out of me, but it was very clear that sort of book we were going to do. So the sex, drugs, and rock and roll can wait till the next edition. Rohit, would you like to collaborate on that one?
Yeah, of course, for sure. The changing life of Abhinav Bindra. But I think we were pretty clear early on. I think that was a nice thing because I think when you want to do a book, you got to be on the same wavelength.
Yes.
So we pretty much knew that we aren't going to write a bestseller, right? This isn't cricket, right? Even though he's an Olympic champion, and now he's one of two. That time he was the only one. And it's extraordinary, his story, but we understood this is shooting. It's a different business. So we thought we wanted to do the book that we wanted to do, which was like a hardcore, intense book and a look inside him. He doesn't have any sexy stories. He doesn't drive fast cars, date actresses, party, whatever. He's quite boring outside shooting, right? So if you want to put it that way. But we just wanted to do an intense book of how does the mind work? How does a kid from Chandigarh even think of an Olympic gold? We look at Olympic champions as these great mythical creatures, and they always come from another country, you know, and they're huge and fit and toned and whatnot. How does this guy even do it, and how did he chase it? And you know, I think the intensity of what he went through taught me so much. You know, I'm 20 years older than him exactly, right? And so when we did it, we were like, it was 10 years ago. I was 49 and he was 29, right? And I'd been writing for so many years, but he taught me, I think doing that book, he taught me more about sport than I had learned probably in most of my career. Because I mean, I'm getting a world champion and Olympic champion telling me all the things that he did. Stunning.
I think one way in which the book is very different, as you said, all the drama is inside. And I think that's one reason also why the book remains in that sense contemporary, because the events fade, the intensity of the events fade, things around you fade, but the stuff inside the book is such, and that's why I say that, you know, this is a book which is about sports writing at its best, but it also kind of touches at the genre of life writing itself, and for reasons which we'll come to in a bit. I remember reading an excerpt which talks about shooting, which I think it says it's a cousin of archery, a relative of chess, and we are the nerds of sports. So I think the fact that the book is in its quiet, dramatic tension throughout is also perhaps a factor of the way shooting itself is and the way the sport is on the one hand, and perhaps Rohit, also the way Abhinav himself is, or at least was at that time. I think it's a factor of both. But I guess you guys decided to write this book with this tone in mind. It was a brave move, and you guys pulled it off. But this tone of, you know, this pitch of quiet, intense, slow, process-driven writing, focusing on, there is stuff happening around. There are competitions happening. There is all that. But the fact that if you really say the juice of the book lies in the fact that it's kind of very quiet, dramatic tension, which runs throughout, at least till 2008. And I think that's something I guess you guys decided to take a call on and figured it out. I'll just read another excerpt from this, just to kind of keep at that process bit. Abhinav, I mean, in a sense, you yourself say that you were in one way an unlikely champion, because here you are a shooter with minus 3, minus 2.5. Yeah, you're wearing spectacles, you've got a bit of a back issue going on. And yet your coach is saying that you have a quiet, meditative presence. Yeah, and this sense of that they're convinced by you, even if it seems that this is an unlikely guy to kind of go all the way. And of course, on the other hand, there is also stuff happening for you. You at 14, you're doing well throughout. There's no doubt about that part. But it's just that there is a whole question of self-belief. We were not used to champions as a nation, and you are kind of plowing a lonely furrow, so to speak. In the same breath, a couple of more excerpts on process, which I felt was the running thread throughout the book. Quote unquote. Back then, as a young boy still starting, victory was pure, like the innocence of a first kiss. My God, you think, I am something. Later, victory becomes relief, for you expect yourself to win. You demand it of yourself. But knowing you are good enough to win engulfs you with a different pressure. Finally, victory becomes not irrelevant, just not secondary, but just not the greatest pleasure. It is staying faithful through time and tribulation to a process. It is the travel to greatness which is most rewarding. And then there is this really nice excerpt which comes after this in a really striking chapter called The Embrace of Obsession, quote unquote. This need to be flawless becomes like a disease. Every piece of equipment, clothing, breathing, stance is nitpicked over. It all has to be precise to the point where flawless isn't just a score, it is a feeling. 1 week in Germany in 2004, I shot 6 consecutive perfect 600s, 60 shots into the bullseye. It is don't mess with me shooting. But I was still irritated, and even my mother was confused. What more do you want? My reply was curt. The feeling wasn't good. It is like winning but without rhythm, like a batsman hitting a four, but the tremor of contact going from bat to hand telling him it isn't perfect. It is a shot without a sense of fulfillment. I guess it's hard to explain, or as Ian Thorpe once said in a different context, it is an athlete's thing. In a nutshell, 2004 happens. What happens in 2004? You're shooting in the best of your form. Something goes wrong with the floor. You never mention it. You never think that the floor is to be blamed, but your coach, Gabby, says that the floor wasn't stitched properly, it was wobbly, etc., etc. You didn't let it bog you. What happens between 2004 and 2008? You won the World Championships in 2006. And then there's this complete, intense, single-minded quest for Olympic gold. What's going on there, Abhinav? What were you, it's been about a few 12, 13 years since then, 14 years, 15 years maybe. What's going on between 2006 and 8? You're doing samadhi baths, you're doing skydiving, all to get to that edge, that last edge, which I think differentiates you from the rest. But what's going on in your mind? And why are you pushing yourself to the edge?
Well, I think the experience in Athens, most importantly, what it taught me was detachment from outcomes and really being driven by the process. And that was the experience that I faced, the failure that I had there, where I went into Athens quite outcome driven, quite confident that I would win a gold medal or a medal at the Olympics, and it didn't happen. But it was really about trying to prepare for every worst case, trying to get to trying to really break my sport down into various elements, be it the physical side, be it the mental side, be it the technical side, or be it the tactical side of things, breaking each thing down and working on it individually and getting better at each little detail. I mean, no detail was small enough for me to ignore. One of the first things what I did coming back from Athens was to install a loose style in my shooting range and practice on it. Because God knows it could happen again. But what also was the case of a person who was pretty insecure, to be very honest. I was an insecure athlete. I never really had self-belief. You touched a little bit on it, but I was really born in a generation of athletes in this country who really did not have that belief, and I certainly struggled to a great degree to get that belief. I worked with several experts, wasted a lot of money on psychologists, made their bank balances quite fat and rich, and became bankrupt myself. But it didn't work, and then there was one defining moment in my career where instead of chasing self-belief, I started chasing self-respect. And I think how do I achieve self-respect is by leaving absolutely nothing to chance, by leaving absolutely no stone unturned to prepare for the Olympic Games, to prepare for my quest in Beijing. And that is why I went into all these obsessive details and whatever I thought could help, I had to try it. I mean, even if I had an idea at 3 o'clock in the morning, I would wake up and go and attempt it. Even when I had bizarre ideas, or even if I was working with a coach who I hardly got along with, but still decided to work with him because a part of me thought that maybe he could help me. I absorbed that, and I went through it because this was this whole journey of chasing self-respect. And there, before I boarded that airplane to Beijing from Munich, where I was based, I asked myself the question that, have I given it my best in the last 4 years to be the best that I can be? Have I humanly put everything possible in this quest? And there the answer was yes, I had done all that I could. And, even before I shot that first competition shot in that Olympic competition, I'd already won. I had already won in my own eyes. And that, frankly, was the most important thing. And frankly, looking back, that is what shines much more than any medal could ever bring. And perhaps, being so obsessive was due to the fact that I was very insecure as an athlete. I was always assailed by a tremendous amount of anxiety, and self-doubt was my constant companion in my entire career. And one way of dealing with this issue was this whole journey of chasing self-respect. And that, for me, was attained by giving it my all. And that's what I try to do.
I want to ask him a question.
Sure.
I want to ask him a question. So actually, before I do that, the one really interesting thing about him is, we are so caught up with coaches nowadays. Rahul Dravid is the latest coach in the news. But what I liked about him, or I found very interesting, is that for a long time, he had two sets of coaches who didn't like each other. But he kept them going because he found different things from both of them. And I like that very much, because you learn, it's actual practice of the idea that you can learn different things from different people. So I quite like that. But what I wanted to ask him, and I haven't asked him this, I mean, we talk quite often, but is that now when you look back at yourself, then this obsessed person, right? Is there any joy in what you did? Where is the joy in what you did? And what is it like living a life of obsession? Because most of us don't live lives of obsession, not to that point, not a single-minded thing. Now, when you look back, what do you think of it?
I think the joy and effort was certainly there. I enjoyed the process, and I enjoyed doing exactly what I did. But I think looking back now that I've exited that investment and can look back far more dispassionately, I think the obsession helped me achieve goals and achieve my goal of winning a gold medal at the Olympic Games. But it was also a very limiting factor. And it certainly did not help me achieve my fullest potential. I certainly believe being that obsessed person, being a person so single-minded in my quest, actually at the end of it was a limiting factor to achieve my fullest potential. I don't think I achieved my fullest potential. I was far better as an athlete in training, and I should have gotten so many more results than I actually did. And why I didn't get there, why I was assailed by all this anxiety, because for a long period of time, my self-worth was dictated by where my name would appear on the ranking list of a sporting competition. And that was completely idiotic, I have to say, and admit.
Abhinav, you reached the pinnacle, 2008. And this is why, again, this book is very different. It doesn't end in a chariots of fire moment of, that kind of, where in fact, it is 2008 to me as a reader is only the intermission. If a book had an intermission moment, picture abhi bhi baki tha, picture baki, what the rest of it is what makes the book really and very endearing, which is you win Olympic gold. The nation has a moment. All of us have a moment when we remember that day. Where were you that day when Abhinav Bindra wins gold? All of us had. The nation has a moment. It breathes suddenly. And then, Abhinav, you have this moment of absolute emptiness. You are suddenly beset with a lack of purpose. And you are kind of staring at the abyss, at emptiness. Would you like to, what was it like? What was going through you after Beijing? You had this about 3 or 4 years where you were basically staring at the abyss, and what was happening? And Rohit, I'm assuming that you were also part of this journey as it kind of unfolded in some ways or the other.
I think that would be overstating it. I think the life the athlete lives is just his life. And what pain or trauma or despair he goes through, I don't think anybody else can feel except probably his parents. But maybe Abhinav would like to talk about the fact, which I thought I also did not understand it till he spoke about it, that you can win a gold medal and then you can go into the depression. It doesn't make sense to people, but he'll explain it.
Well, I won a gold medal, but I also lost. I lost ambition. And ambition was the thing which really was my great time. I set a goal as a 13-year-old boy in India at that time in the mid-90s to win a gold medal at the Olympic Games. It was a lofty goal to have. It was certainly an ambitious goal to have. And that was my drive to be ambitious, to chase this dream. And one fine day, this dream was achieved. And this gold medal that, every night when I went to bed, I dreamt of winning this gold medal. And every morning, I worked towards achieving that dream. And one fine day it was achieved. And that created confusion. That created a great void. Of course, the whole journey towards Beijing was also exhausting. It was exhausting physically, it was exhausting mentally, it was exhausting emotionally. And you just need sometimes time to rebalance, to re-energize. And I just did not have that luxury to just step back. There was great excitement at home as well on my return, and I was confused. For me, my greatest joy was to work on my craft, and that was my drive for so long. And suddenly, from one day to the other, I didn't have that. I had oriented my life for so long, for 15 years until then, just until that moment, and had never thought of anything beyond. And that led to a great void and an immense amount of confusion. So success can also bring a crisis, and it certainly was a big crisis in my life. And it took some time to first get my energy back to just think straight again, and to think rationally again. And when I did, and I went on a Vipassana meditation course, and when I went into that Vipassana meditation course, the idea was to find my new calling, because before going into this course, I said, I'm done with this, let's find the next calling. So I go to this Vipassana course where I have to meditate 8-10 hours a day, and all I did for those 10 days in silence was to think about my sport and think about what I can do better to improve my craft and to get better as an athlete. And that just gave me my self-realization that I loved what I did, and I loved my craft, which I never acknowledged. You also put yourself through immense pain and suffering through your journey, and I certainly did not acknowledge the love that I had for it. But that realization really at that Vipassana course, that I loved the process of my sport and I just loved doing it, really re-energized me and gave me the clarity which enabled me to push for more, do my best, and I went on to compete at a couple more Olympic Games. I didn't win any more medals, but it was a great adventure, and it was, I kept exploring. I think more than an athlete, I think I was an explorer, exploring myself, trying to get better every day, exploring the absolute edge of performance, and exploring how far I could go. And that's what I did for the next 8-10 years post-Beijing.
It's so fragile, isn't it? This fine line between gold and silver, bronze and fourth position. We all grew up with PT Usha's 55.42. Yeah. And then, this was this moment, but the other thing which you mentioned in the book for the first time, and that is another kind of real moment of fragility, is when you say that your body is in mutiny against yourself. And you it feels like a foreign body. At some point, you in 2014, was it, after the Commonwealth, where you suddenly have epileptic attacks, and suddenly you feel that this body is not your own, and you're having this real moment of fragility. And suddenly, Gabby, your coach says, shooting is holding you together. And you are saying, for now you're shooting with gratitude. It's a different moment. 2014-15 is different. And what's going on there at that point? So you come out of 2008 to 12, and then suddenly this is a kind of a life moment for you. And and your attitude to shooting, does it change? Are you shooting differently? You're still shooting brilliantly. And then you have, and then you have the Rio moment where you lose the bronze by a 0.1, which is as thin as it gets. It's agonizingly close. But does that whole journey, I asked Rohit the other day, which was that, was 2016 Rio, with Abhinav going through all that he's gone through, was that a greater moment of triumph for Abhinav than 2008 Beijing? It's a tough question, depends on where you're kind of, why you would say what is better and what is worse. But Abhinav, 2016 was very different.
I think firstly, you talked about the fragile nature of a sporting journey. And I think most sporting journeys have that fragile nature, except I think there's always been a big misconception and a dehumanization of the athlete, because, we tend to do wonderful things on the field of play, which are extremely aspirational. But we're all human beings. And as human beings, we have our own limitations. We have our own vulnerabilities, which is perhaps not seen by the public at large so much, but they certainly do exist in every sporting journey. And I think the greatest of athletes in the world would have their own challenges. While doing the book, I think one of the elements was to really give a very honest account and really talk about the vulnerabilities. And I think that has come out in the book in many ways. And that, to me, frankly, was something which was, I never really had a problem talking about it, primarily because for me, talking about it was empowering for me as an individual. But I also felt that it could give strength to a lot of other athletes who at times struggle, say, with not with health challenges, challenges with belief, for example, and things like that. And many athletes have come to me and told me that, reading about you and your own challenges really gave them the strength to know that they're not alone, and that even a person who's won a gold medal at the Olympic Games could struggle with that. So that covering vulnerabilities was an important element for me. As regards to 2016, of course, it was a very different journey. I think each of my Olympic journeys was a different journey. I was a different person. I kept, as human beings, we keep changing. My body, of course, kept changing, but also my mind kept changing. My perception of an outlook towards things kept changing. But of course, I think the 2016 journey was special in many ways. Of course, the health challenges with the epilepsy, the sport really became my refuge. And really kept me together in those trying times and in those difficult times. But I also knew that this life was coming to an end. I only had so many pellets left to fire. And that also kind of that situation also forced me to appreciate a little bit and be grateful for the great opportunity that I had to practice and compete in sport for 20 odd years. Competing at the highest level for so long is a luxury. I mean, very few people in the world are able to do that. So it also gave me that ability to really be thankful for the first time. And it was a wonderful journey. It was something which, I really enjoyed the camaraderie that I had with my coaches during that journey, even during those tough times, not knowing what will happen in the next moment, but having the ability to find humor in the most trying of situations was extremely special. The bond that I was able to build with support staff or with people around me was a wonderful journey, and it was different. I did not win. I was fourth, and I was fourth because I wasn't good enough for third or better. But at the end of the day, sporting competition to a great degree is also about winning. And I, of course, went into the Olympic Games not to finish fourth. I went into the Olympic Games in Rio to win a gold medal, and I did not win that gold medal. So there were victories at a personal level. It was immensely gratifying on a human level, and it is. I mean, there's great learning in that, and then there's great gratification and fulfillment in that in itself for me. But to answer what was greater, I think it's a difficult one. I can say that, yes, on a human level, the Rio journey was very special and very fulfilling, perhaps even more fulfilling than the Beijing one. But if I had not got a gold medal at the Olympics, lying in a cabinet at home, and ended my career in fourth place, I don't know if I would have had this closure so easily.
Rohit, this is straight up your street, isn't it? Your writings, this passion for sports.
I just want to interrupt you to say this very articulate Abhinav that you hear now speaking so fluently. This is not the one that I had when I was doing the book. Okay, that was a very, very different guy. Yes, Abhinav.
But
yes?
I did talk. But I did try and talk, and I did try.
So it's sort of like you going to interview him. You didn't take a pen and paper. You took a pickaxe and then you just pick away at him or whatever. Abhinav is actually quite shy. So, and not really good at talking about himself, but I think he's realized that his telling his story has an effect on people, so he does that very well. But I just want to say that what I've always liked about him, always, from the moment I started doing the book, and which made the book much easier for me to do, is that he's a very honest man. He never asked me to take anything out of the book, and there was no question that he did not answer. And I think when you are trying to do a book with somebody, that's really what you want. And the other thing, of course, which was very refreshing, very different from writing on cricketers, for instance, is he's punctual. He was always ready. So when I went to Delhi to interview him for the book, then he'd always be ready. And, his phone never rang. He'd put it aside. He was very professional. And that, again, for a writer, is really what you want. Somebody is honest and professional. That's the best thing you can get. Sorry, you were saying something.
Yeah, I think you just didn't see a side to Abhinav that existed, but didn't show. He had, he's a man of great innate talents, and I guess something showed up a little later, and thankfully it did.
Yeah.
When this point, Rohit, that throughout your writing, people who love your writing also love it because of the way that your writing shows your love for sports for its own sake. In other words, you've written wonderfully about the great champs, Abhinav included, your pieces about Federer, we can dime a dozen. But you are also you celebrate the amateur in sport, the fun of gully cricket, going to a Maidan and doing something there. Yeah, this kind of fun, the joy river, so to speak, of sports itself. And when Abhinav is saying this personal journey versus Olympic gold, the two don't have to be, of course, polar opposites. In Abhinav's case, it isn't, frankly. There are all kinds of moments there. These are not polar opposite. But Rohit, that's the moment for you in that sense, right? Your writings are constantly about the sheer love of sports for its own sake, while you celebrate excellence. And I think in that sense, where are you on your own sports journey? You've been writing for a while now, and has it come to a point now that we think that in that sense, winning or losing, yes, it's
Firstly, you're too kind about my writing. I know lots of people who hate my writing, but I find athletes very intriguing people. I'll say that. I learn things from athletes all the time. And most of them are obviously much, much, much younger than me. And I think listening to athletes and the things they go through, which are so unusual and so different, I could never live a life like that, where I had to live under a spotlight and talk to journalists every day. I just couldn't manage it. It just takes a certain type of person, a skill, a discipline. I think when I was younger, I was different, but I think over time, I'm not a winning and losing kind of guy. I really, I can't say I don't care, right? I care if Federer wins, but I enjoy sport. I like the way people play. I am taken by the character of great athletes. I always admire the way people lose. I like people who make great sacrifice. I love Olympic athletes, specifically because of two reasons. One is that Olympic athletes don't really make a lot of money, number one. And number two, they are chasing this 4-year cycle, which actually doesn't really make any sense if you think about it. It's not like, you have 4 Grand Slams in a year, you have 4 chances. They have one chance, and sometimes that chance can last 10 seconds or 15 seconds or 20 seconds. So you're actually chasing something for 4 years, which lasts 20 seconds, or actually chasing it for 6 years. And that I find a great romance to that, like a certain type of madness. And that I find something really beautiful to that, because who cares about, judokas and, to be honest, shooters, or, most of the athletes at the Olympics, people don't know their names. They're not, Premier League footballers or NBA stars or cricketers or whatever. But for them, this chase is meaningful and beautiful, and they give up things and they make these great sacrifices and shift towns and, mortgage their houses and for what? For a medal, which is, they're not going to make money out of it. Most of them don't make money, right? You may be a very famous track star from America who can, turn a gold medal into millions, but otherwise most people are not. And so I find a little poetry in that. Just a chase for human achievement, nothing more than that.
Abhinav, cut to 2021. You're in a different avatar now, so to speak, and your foundation is doing things which are really impressive. You are now in the business of being a change maker, so to speak. You're trying to build an ecosystem of sports excellence, and you're building from, you had, thankfully, an ecosystem around you, right from the time your mom believed in you, from shooting under the mango tree. Readers can read all that. But now, the fact that now you're a force for change, and, would you like to talk about your foundation? I ran through some of the stuff. It's like you're doing science, tech. There's something called the STEAM fellowship, science, technology. I've lost track of it. Something as analytics. Yeah, there's a scholarship which is based around science, technology, and stuff like that. You're doing data-driven sports excellence. You've got a sports medicine and sports research institute in Bhubaneswar right now. You are really giving back, but there is also a sense of creating a value. What's going on right now? How are you what's giving back like? Some people say, let Abhinav Bindra take charge of sports. We'll be a very different sporting nation in India. I appreciate that sentiment, but I think I also appreciate that niche sentiment, which is that you are trying to do something in your niche thing. But more from your side, what's going on right now with the foundation, with your work around data science? How are you building up the next generation of sports people? You have a mental wellness part as part of the whole package. There's a whole thing about mental wellness. Athletes, when they retire, there is very little in India, how it is. But you've thought about all this. What's all this about right now? And where is this from here to the next 10 years, maybe, or 5 years, whatever you think? Yeah.
Well, I think I received so much from my sports career that it was important for me to give back in a certain way. And of course, the primary outreach to Indian sport is through my foundation. That is how I try and contribute back. We have 3 pillars of what we do. The first one is intervention, where we give a scholarship, as you said, called STEAM, Science, Technology, Engineering, Analytics, and Medicine. And we incorporate that into grassroots athlete training. So all our scholarship holders are between the age of 12 and 17. And that is really where my interest lies. So we have athletes from various disciplines who come to our centers, we have about 7 centers across the country. And we leverage a lot on science and technology to get them achieve and get them their best, to really lay that foundation backed by science and backed by technology. The second element of intervention is a program called Sports for Her. It's a program dedicated to the female athlete. We've built a platform which empowers the female athlete, because the female athlete has specific requirements, specific health requirements, specific nutritional requirements that have to be taken care of. We even give them lessons on leadership, for example, because I believe that athletes can be wonderful leaders as well. So it's a program specifically designed for them. The second pillar is education. As you said, that it's not just about supporting athletes. I think, frankly, athlete support and elite athlete support has to be centralized, and that really is the job of the federations and the government to do it in a central way. But I think very important aspect is to empower the ecosystem that surrounds the athlete. It's also about empowering our coaches, empowering our support staff, and thus we've started these programs on sports science, on physiotherapy in our institute. Again, getting global best practice, having a world-class faculty from all across the world to deliver lectures, to really empower them and to really build that personnel from India, who are as good as anyone else in the world. The second element of education is to deal with leadership and governance. This is an aspect where we've struggled to a great degree, and Rohit has covered Indian sport, and I'm sure he has several stories in regards to governance and the challenges that we've had in governance. So, but we have to do something about it. So there in partnership with another foundation out of India called the ELMS Foundation and the University of Loughborough, which is ranked the best sports university in the world. We set up a 15-module program to empower administrators, to really give them access to global best practice on how to run sport, how to build a high-performance environment. We are in year 3 of the course. We've had good participation from all stakeholders in Indian sport. So that is something that we'll continue to work on. Athlete mental health is something I'm personally very passionate about, given my own challenges during my sporting career and my involvement on my personal capacity in the Athletes Commission of the IOC. I've worked quite a lot on athlete mental health. So really working here to, of course, educate the system here a little bit, to destigmatize the whole aspect of athlete mental health, and really to work towards creating psychologically safe environments for athletes to participate in sport. The last pillar is using the power of sport for social good. My first program was with my former rival and now a good friend, Niccolò Campriani. We worked on the refugee cause, where we supported a couple of refugees to take up sport. These were not athletes. They were just simply refugees who found refuge in life through sport. And happy to tell you that 2 of them actually competed at the Tokyo Olympics, one representing Afghanistan because he was still an asylum seeker, and one took part as part of the Olympic refugee team. The last project what we are involved in, and I'm pretty passionate about, is a value education project, an Olympic value education project, because really, frankly, the real power of sport lies not in winning medals. That is good. It is aspirational. It displays your country's soft skills around the world. But how can we meaningfully use sport and leverage on the power of sport to shape societies? Sport teaches you a thing or two about winning, but more importantly, sport teaches you how to lose. Sport teaches you how to have honesty, teaches you how to have integrity, teaches you how to set goals and how to chase them. It teaches you a lot about conflict, about dealing with conflict. It teaches you to become tolerant. It teaches you how to listen to different points of views. Sport teaches you a lot about respect. It teaches you about following rules. As human beings, the first time we are introduced to the concept of rules is when we play, whether we create a game with our siblings, toddlers, it still has some rules, it still has a framework. So I think sport can play a hugely meaningful role in instilling values in our very young society. And we have a very young demographic in India, and I think struggling a little bit on this whole value. And I think sport can play a hugely meaningful role. So we are working towards delivering a couple of projects, at least as a pilot to start with, on this value education. But that's just basically a little bit of an overview of what I'm doing.
It's fascinating stuff, Rohit. This is a very different Abhinav, as you say. But of course, all of this was still there. He's just growing and he's journeying through this. He's got new stuff up his plate. This is a journey. I mean, this stuff is for the next many more years and I think this is something that goes way beyond winning and losing in Olympic gold medals and so on, but it's going way into into the whole philosophy of sports. What does sports mean for ourselves? And I mean, we work, for example, in IIHS, we are trying to do what we can to create better cities in India, in whichever way we mean. And I think there is a question there, which is that how can sports create more meaningful environments, habitats? It is on one hand a passport for people from underprivileged backgrounds to kind of go up there, and we've seen examples of that. We see that in football and in other sports where you see that kind of, but that's only a kind of very, very minuscule percentage of somebody who makes it and goes all the way. But there's also the other side of it, which is that sports it's in itself a way to kind of build bridges. I think more cohesive societies deal better with strangers, people who are not like us, make a more plural society, shake hands when we lose, whether we like it or not. Rohit, where does Indian sports go from here? Abhinav's doing his bit. You've been watching this for a while. I think this is a very exciting, I find this conversation extremely exciting. It's really, really good stuff that we always thought about. And here's somebody who's actually going ahead and doing it in his own little way, in his own meaningful way. But for somebody like you who's been seeing this for the last 30, 35 years, right from sports world days to now, is this an exciting time for Indian sports?
Yeah, for sure. But
glass is half full?
Yeah, always. And no, you guys have said most of the stuff about the value systems in sports, so I got nothing to add. I would like to see one thing in India is, I would just like to see more fields. I think kids deserve a place to play. For me, that's an incredibly important thing. And we all grew up playing cricket in gullies and streets and whatnot, and that's fine. But I think it's really important for the well-being of a child to have a place to play. And that's one of the things I would really like to see. And on the other point, I am really impressed with Abhinav. I'm not saying that because he's here, because I think, I've seen him now for so long and seen him develop and grow. And I think, he's doing important things, and he has a great love for sport. And I think he's dealing with deep issues. I think there's too much talk about winning and losing, as and money and whatnot. I think he's talking about mental health, and he's talking about value systems, and I think we are both pretty much on the same plane on these things, and I learn a lot of things from him. And I'm glad he's talking about those things, because those are important things.
I'm just looking at the watch, the clock, so to speak. Time is relentless. And with my eye on the clock, I have another eye on the questions which have been on the chat box. And I'm trying to paraphrase some of this. Give me just a second. There is a demand for a sequel to the sequel. It seems. Now that there is a spotlight on the book again, do you wish you had added something more to it, or edited something out? I read the book when it came out. In other words, more is expected. And I think it will be a different kind of expectation. So that's something for you guys to figure out, I guess. Is there a sequel to the sequel? Is it like, or is it a different book altogether? Most likely. Then there's a question saying, does winning a gold and then competing in the next Olympics liberate you? That sort of you've been there, done that, or put more pressure to the medal? I think you answered that question about Rio being what it was. You couldn't have had Rio without Beijing. You want to add to that, Abhinav, or you think?
No, I think it's liberating for a while, but I think in sport, yesterday really never counts. You're only as good as what you're today, and the unique thing about sport is that you'll always be questioned and to prove how good you are and how talented you are. So, of course, when you go into, I think London brought its own expectations. There was much expected out of me, and I didn't really do well there. But it was dealing with I had to deal with a different environment of sorts. When I went into Beijing, yes, I was world champion going into it, but frankly, I don't think more than 10 people knew about me. Which was 8 people would probably be my family. it was different. So I think I don't think it's how you perceive and how you mentally process it. I think for some, if they process it well, it could be liberating. You go into the next, hey, I have nothing to lose. I've been there, done that. Let's try and do our best. But I think winning also requires a bit of that edge. It requires that bit of desperation to be the best that you can be. So you have to learn to deal with it well and find that.
I don't think anybody who wins an Olympic medal can then say, I got nothing to lose, right? I mean, because if you won one, then you think you can win again, right? So, I mean, there must be that. I think what you said is the environment changes. I think there's more noise, there's more attention, there are more cameras, which is really good for a sport sometimes, like it was for shooting, but it's really perhaps not good for you. And so I think, you'll never get that silence again to work in quietly. There'll always be noise around you. That's fair, right?
Absolutely.
I have a question from 2 9-year-olds. We can't ignore that question. These are your 2 9-year-old fans, Mog and Anavi, who have asked, who inspired you? And sweet and short. There is a question which says, did the sheltering of the sport of shooting from the public eye make Abhinav Bindra what he is? What if Abhinav was Virat? Fair enough. I think we've got a bit of the public glare part already. But I guess this question from your 9-year-old fans deserves a bit of pause and reflection. It's a simple question. Who inspired you?
I think my father inspired me. I think he was somebody who pushed me into sport. I wasn't somebody who liked sport. And, one of my greatest memories is when I was in boarding school. And I was very unhappy in boarding school. And I used to receive a letter every day from him. Every single day I used to receive a letter from him. And there was always one thing common in that letter, which was that I should try and play sport. So I think looking back, I think he inspired me to a great degree to take up sport.
Final words from Rohit first, Abhinav then, and I'll just kind of close after that.
I got no final words. It's just really nice to be a part of this chat. Always learn a little bit about sport. And just thank you for having us here. We appreciate it.
Abhinav?
No, thank you very much for the invitation. And it was a great pleasure.
Thank you, Rohit. Thank you, Abhinav. Today has been one of the more endearing evenings of my life. I'll remember this evening. I had a moment like this about 10, 11 years ago when I was at the Nou Camp watching Barcelona play Valencia. It was a 2010 Spanish team. And my wife was wondering what on earth is wrong with me, because I was in that moment of bliss. I'm not so blissful at the moment, but I feel this is one of my good memories. It's one of my better evenings. And thank you for making it happen. And I hope this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship. Thank you so much, Rohit. Thank you, Abhinav. And thank you. Sophia, over to you.
Thanks, Amlan. Thank you so much for being part of Public Texts and for the lively interaction. And thank you to everybody who attended our session today. A quick reminder for all of you to check out the links in your chat box for the session recording and registration. We are on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, so you can follow us there for regular updates too. This is our last Public Text for the year, and we wish you all a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Thank you so much again. Have a good evening.